Long before there were computers, there were pencils, number 2 pencils to be exact, and they had erasers on the end of it. The Steelers are trying to erase a history they have with the number 2 seed in the NFC, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles, a team they have not beaten in Philadelphia since 1965, back when the three of us were using pencils.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for being with us for the matchup presented by Shell Polymers alongside Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson. You know him, you love him from The Drive. I'm Rob King. Thanks very much for being with us. We were at that point of the season where the Steelers are playing good football, Philadelphia's playing good football, and there are playoff scenarios to discuss. And for the Steelers, pretty simple. The simplest way is you win and you're in.
Yeah, it doesn't get any easier than that. They can also, even if they lose this game on Sunday to the Philadelphia Eagles, they get in if both Miami and Indianapolis lose, and they're both on the road this week. So some different permeations of how they can get into the playoffs, but to your point, the simplest way is to just win the game.
Yeah, it feels inevitable, Matt, but it's not inevitable until you've actually done it.
And yeah, it's so easy for us to say,
right.
But right. I mean, yeah, exactly. If they happen to drop this one, though, you beat the Ravens, you win the division, right?
Right.
You know, that's
but it's still a brutal schedule waiting for the Steelers, beginning with this game against the Philadelphia Eagles. And let's begin with our matchups. And we're going to start with the Eagles' offense on this one. And for me, the key is to keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket. I mean, this is a guy, he's very effective, obviously, with his legs. He scores a bunch of touchdowns, a lot of those, of course, on the tush push. But when he gets out of the pocket, rushing for 10 yards a clip, that's the best he's ever done. More first downs when he's running than he's ever done. I will say this, the Steelers have done a marvelous job with keeping Lamar Jackson in the pocket, keeping Jaden Daniels in the pocket, Matt, and I think that Hurts is that type of a runner, so being able to at least minimize this part of their game would go a long way toward securing victory.
Humongous, and he gets uncomfortable in the pocket. He's got a very high time to throw. We know he's a great runner. The Steelers are really the best defense in the league at limiting quarterback rushing yards, and you really want him to hold the ball, get uncomfortable, kind of boa constrictor to that pocket, and it's not something people talk about a lot, but I think the Steelers are the best team in the league with a pass rush plan. It's not just light your hair on fire and go get sacks. It's a team, unselfish approach to make the defense work as a whole.
Dale, we saw a little clip there of Hurts being strip sacked, and to me, that can be part of this. Yes, you're talking about limiting him running, but now you're trying to sort of find that balance between that and getting after him, because he's been stripped 5 times. That's tied for the second most in the league. You've got Herbig and Watt, who are tied for the league lead in stripping quarterbacks.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, the line that you walk with running quarterbacks, because a lot of times they're running and somebody's getting to them from behind, or they're rolling out and looking down the field and still looking to pass, so you get that opportunity to knock the ball free. And the Steelers have been good at that this year. They have 23 forced fumbles over the course of the season. And so if they can do that and get some turnovers in this game, that's huge, because Hurts hasn't turned the ball over a lot throwing the football, just one, I believe, in the last 2 months. They're not taking a lot of chances down the field, but he's also not throwing a lot of interceptions.
So I think we've led with the second most important part of this, stopping this Eagles offense. Dale, we just heard Tara Lawson talking a short time ago, the defensive coordinator for the Steelers, saying, if you don't slow down Saquon Barkley, you don't have a chance of beating the Eagles.
Yeah, you're going to be in for a long day if you don't stop Saquon, because they'll run the football. The Eagles run it more even than the Steelers do. They're the most run-heavy team in the league. And as much as they run the ball early in the game, they run it even more in the second half, where they're running, I think it's like 28% of the time they pass the ball in the second half of games, because they just rely on Saquon Barkley. And then you look at what he and Hurts can do to you. They've combined for 24 touchdowns on the ground. And a lot of times with Barkley, you have him wrapped up or you have him bottled up for much of the game. And the next thing you know, he busts off a 76-yard run, and all of a sudden that 15 carries for 40 yards that you had just given up now becomes 16 for 110.
He's a remarkable talent, and I wouldn't say it was wasted in New York, but it's flourishing here with this line and these weapons, and he's in the prime of his career. I mean, he has some crazy numbers. I mean, he's on pace to beat the all-time record. He's already the Eagles' single-season leader.
Already.
In these 4 games to go. I mean, LaShawn McCoy was a heck of a player. He's been tackled on the 1-yard line 11 times.
Yeah.
I mean, like, think about that. If he just gets in 11 more touchdowns.
And guess who gets 10 of those touchdowns? Jalen Hurts.
Right.
10 of his 13 touchdowns right there. But I love that first clip we saw, because it just shows guys, how difficult he can be. And all these clips, he will run away from you like he did here. If you're not prepared, he will run you over, as you saw against the Giants, and then he will do something I've never, ever seen, and that's leap over a guy backwards in the middle of the field.
I don't know why you would ever do that, but he did it.
I mean, even the Russian judge gave him a 10.0 on that one. I mean, it's incredible. But Queen and Barkley, I mean, these guys, Queen and Roberts against Barkley, that's why you have guys like this that can run and hit out in the middle of the field and hopefully be able to keep up and minimize Barkley.
And the Steelers' tackling has been really good this year, too. I mean, they don't miss a lot of tackles. I think a big component is obviously this offseason they upgraded their team speed on defense. So getting a lot of people to Barkley is going to be important, too, because as he's shown here and we've mentioned, you can look like he's wrapped up and he bounces it and then he goes 80. I mean, he takes it to the house.
So excellent news here, Matt. On first and second down, the Steelers have limited Saquon Barkley. Their pass rush is keeping Hurts in the pocket, so he has to throw the ball. The bad news is when he has to throw the ball, he has A.J. Brown and Dante Smith on the outside, two remarkable talents. But the Steelers have a couple of pretty good corners, so this is going to be a great matchup as well.
Yeah, I'm curious how they handle this because job number one is going to be taking away the run or limiting the run. You're not going to take that away. So how much can you load boxes? Are you going to leave these corners on islands, or are you just going to play a kind of generic cover 3 shell and make them nickel and dime you down the field? A.J. Brown's been pretty outspoken that he wants the football more, and we've seen him do serious damage to the Steelers, and he was with Arthur Smith with the Titans and was phenomenal there. He's one of the best receivers in the league. So I would imagine Porter gets Brown a high percentage of the time, and Jackson gets Smith, who's now back from injury. I guess the only good news is Dallas Goedert's not in the equation, but this is a really good offense with great weapons.
Yeah, and if you look at the last time these two teams played a couple of years ago, Brown had touchdown catches of 39, 27, and 29 yards in 2022. But the Eagles aren't throwing the ball deep as much as they used to. I think that's where some of A.J. Brown's frustration is coming from here. He hasn't caught a touchdown pass in a couple of months. Their deep passes are way down. They haven't thrown a 20-plus yard touchdown pass since November 4th. Well, that's over a month ago. So it's been a lot of the Saquon Barkley show with them running, but they still have that capability.
Now, you mentioned that last game. One thing that should probably give Steelers fans additional hope is the fact that T.J. Watt didn't play in that game, which leads us to our Yin's Chat regular season challenge. Answer trivia and predictive questions and compete against Steelers Nation for a chance to win a jersey signed by T.J. Watt. Remember to keep playing each week for a chance at new prizes and a chance at a VIP trip to the 2025 draft in Green Bay. Up next, the Steelers' offense against the Eagles' #1 defense when the matchup presented by Shell Polymers resumes.
Hi folks, welcome to the Pittsburgh Steelers Hall of Honor Museum.
Now this is the best era.
I couldn't agree more. Those teams were unstoppable.
The teams were really good in the 90s. Come on, you couldn't catch those teams of the 2000s. Literally.
The 70s were the best.
No way, the 2000s.
Whoa, stop fighting. I think every era was pretty sweet.
You said it, kid. I hope you guys enjoyed yourselves.
Wait, you're T?
Earlier this week, Mike Tomlin in his weekly press conference called it the Battle for Pennsylvania, said that the Steelers are happy to represent the WPIAL. They can play this game in Breezewood against the Eagles. They won't. They'll be playing it at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia coming up on Saturday. The Eagles have been installed the slight favorites in this game, actually a little bit more than slight, about 5-point favorites. And that leads us, Dale, to the fact that if you could win the turnover battle, and the Steelers are tied for the Bills, #1 in the league in that margin, this could be the kind of thing that would tilt the game, maybe perhaps in the favor of the Steelers.
Yeah, it's really something that they kind of have to do. They can't lose a turnover battle in this one because if you do, you're already kind of playing left-handed as it is without George Pickens out there. And it's what the Steelers have done. And if you look at the Eagles, they've forced fumbles this year. They've forced a bunch of them. They haven't recovered a bunch of them. And so their turnover ratio isn't great. The Steelers have forced those fumbles, and they've force the interceptions, and so they lead in turnover margin. So you have to take care of the football in this particular game like you do every week, but you've got to win that turnover battle. You've got to make sure you take advantage of that if the Eagles do turn it over.
Matt, that word margin, you use that a lot when you're talking about winning in the margins. This would be an excellent game for the Steelers to win the turnover battle, win in special teams. They've got the great Chris Boswell. Elliott's had his struggles, especially with long field goals for the Eagles. So maybe there's different ways, little ways that you can help out your offense and defense by winning in those quote-unquote margins.
Yeah, I'd throw penalties in there as well. I mean, there's neither one of these teams is real far in the penalty, good or bad. They're both kind of in the middle. But the Steelers always have a special teams advantage. They pretty much always have a kicker advantage. That's true here as well. And a team like this, I mean, this is one of the best teams in the league. It might be the best teams in the league. All those departments, you're going to have to win in, all those margins.
So let's get to our matchups now when the Steelers have the ball. And last week, the Steelers come out, they scored 27 points. People are kind of grumbling. They only scored 27 points. Right? You won by 13 over one of the best defenses in the NFL. Arthur Smith, though, didn't know he wasn't going to have George Pickens. The reports are they thought that Pickens was going to be ready to go. Well, now they've got a week to prepare. So your matchup is Arthur Smith against Vic Fangio, the obviously well-regarded defensive coordinator for the Eagles.
Yeah, he's really good, and you see, a lot of the Fangio stuff with this Philadelphia defense. They get after the quarterback without blitzing a whole lot. They're stout up front. They stop the run pretty well, and they turn people over to a large degree. And so, you look at what he's done with some of these new pieces this year, a couple of rookie cornerbacks that they've added to this. They've kind of made Zach Vaughn, moved him inside and turned him into a much better player than he had been earlier in his career. So Arthur Smith's got to have to come up with a plan here to kind of make the Eagles, I think, match up with what the Steelers do. And I think that would be a lot of 12 and 13 personnel out there in this situation, because the Eagles see a lot of 11. And, if you can make them do things they don't want to do, well, then that might be advantage you.
And again, I don't know what other opposing offensive coordinators are thinking about. And, you want to adapt. You want to be true to yourself. You want to be able to adapt. Maybe they're looking at that Tampa Bay tape where Tampa Bay just came out and threw it all over the Eagles and scored a bunch of points. I don't know what teams are thinking, but whatever they're thinking hasn't been working against this Eagles defense.
No, it hasn't. And the defense gets better and better, pretty much throughout the course of the year. He mentioned the two highly drafted defensive backs. Now they understand the league, and Vaughn had a position change. He's been tremendous. But as Dale mentioned, offensive coordinators are saying, we're going to play 11 against the Eagles, more than against any defense in the league. They see the highest percentage of 11. One back, one tight end, three receivers. Well, Steelers don't really have their three best receivers. And that doesn't mean those offensive coordinators don't know what they're talking about, but maybe you just do something that they haven't seen a lot of, like Dale mentioned, with three tight ends on the field, two tight ends on the field, because they don't get it very often at all.
And Arthur Smith praising Darnell Washington, kind of going out of his way to praise Darnell Washington at the weekly meeting with the media. The coordinators meet with the media and discuss the shape of the team. Okay, so let's talk about up front. Jalen Carter is just really a terrific player. 6 sacks a year ago. He has 4.5 this year. First-round pick. High pedigree guy. He against Mason McCormick. If I was sitting at home in my living room and not calling the game, I would be dialed into that matchup because I just think it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, he's quickly becoming one of the best defensive tackles in the league. I mean, I think that he's got a lot of Pro Bowls and All-Pros in his future, hitting his stride, playing more and more snaps as the season goes on, which is a testament to him as well. He's got it all. I mean, he's a remarkable talent. He's a true three technique where he's going to line up a high percentage of his time on McCormick's outside shoulder. So when you help him, probably going to be Broderick Jones, his old Georgia teammate, is going to have to chip in some way, shape, or form. But Carter can wreck a game.
Which is why Darnell Washington was mentioned today, because he may end up blocking a lot of those guys on the edge if Broderick Jones is going to have to help out there. But that's a prime matchup this week. McCormick is going to be matched up on Jalen Carter one-on-one on his own at times, because unlike the other Philadelphia defensive linemen who all play under 50% of the snaps, Carter is the one guy that's out there he's 82% of the snaps for them this year. He never comes off the field.
And think about Steelers fans, think about when the Steelers front is disruptive, how much it allows your fast linebackers to move around. And Vaughn and Dean they're both good, fast linebackers that can move, that are going to be aided considerably if their guys can get the job done up front. And that begins with their best defensive lineman, and that's Jalen Carter. And you talked about Darnell Washington. That gets me to my key, which is the tight ends. Obviously, there's no George Pickens. Look, you can look at any numbers you want. There are numbers that say the Eagles do a pretty good job against tight ends. There are others that I cherry-picked that say tight ends can have pretty good success against. So I'm going with those. And, when you talk about where your mismatches are, where your potentials are, they've got very, very good corners. You don't have Pickens. They'll probably try to play those guys honest. I think, Pat Freiermuth, last 14 passes thrown his way, 13 have been caught. That's a very high percentage. That's something you like to see. He's got touchdowns in his last couple. I think he's a very difficult matchup for any team. Then you throw Darnell Washington in there, maybe Pruitt and Hayward. I think we're going to see some heavy personnel, and I think that this could be an area that the Steelers can exploit and might be part of the way that the offense leads the way.
Yeah, if you look at it, their strong safety is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah.
And he's really a converted nickel corner. That was what he does by trade. But he has given up 5 touchdowns this year as the strong safety, so you can attack maybe him with the tight ends a little bit. The Eagles have given up, I believe, a tight end touchdown in each of the last couple of games here. And without George Pickens out there, Pat Freiermuth might be your most important pass catcher.
Yeah, and I don't even think it has anything to do with the Pickens injury so much, because 2 weeks ago was Freiermuth's best usage, highest usage in terms of route participation, route share, all that stuff. And then last week, he took it to another level. So he's got a lot of momentum right now. I think they're finding out best ways to use him. So he's going to have a huge game in this one. There's going to be a lot of points. This is a tough game no matter what.
Including the playoffs, Russell Wilson is 6-0 against the Eagles, 4-0 in Philadelphia.
He's also 4-0 in his career when he faces the #1 ranked defense.
And that is what he will be doing on Sunday when the 10-3 Steelers, looking to clinch a playoff spot with a victory, visit the 11-2 Philadelphia Eagles. Kickoff at Lincoln Financial Field is scheduled for 4:25. For Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson from The Drive, I'm Rob King. We thank you for watching this edition of The Matchup, presented by Shell Polymers.